doing a seminar on the 1,000 Splendid Sons. So for the introduction, special abuse. Special abuse happens to both men and women all around the world. Many societies do not allow this type of violence. However, there are many countries where domestic violence is legal or common. It is legal to participate in domestic violence in countries such as Congo, Haiti, and Pakistan. It's also common but not illegal to commit domestic violences in countries such as Afghanistan. Now let's look at some statistics. So, statistics of domestic violence. 1.3 million women in the US alone have suffered from domestic violence. 850,000 men in the US has also suffered. 35% of women in the entire world have suffered domestic abuse by an intimate partner. 38% of women murders were committed by an intimate partner. And men are more likely to abuse their partner if they have a history of alcohol, child maltreatment, and many other reasons. And women who are abused are targeted because of history of childhood abuse, male privilege, and others as well. So how does this relate? Special abuse is a prominent theme in the novel. Two of the main characters suffer from some form of special abuse, Mariam and Layla. A setting of a novel also takes place in Afghanistan where domestic abuse is common. So my thesis. Khaled Hosseini's 1,000 Splendid Sons explores many themes such as man's inhumanity to man, resistance to victimization, and the most prominent theme, special abuse. Mariam and Layla are women who are put through special abuse by their husband Rashid in three different ways: emotional, physical, and sexual. So, first we're going to look at emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is a form of verbal abuse where the victim suffers psychological trauma causing depression, PTSD, and anxiety. Mariam is constantly being verbally abused by Rashid throughout the novel. He calls her a harami, which translates to bastard. Constant verbal abuse can really affect one's mental state, which could lead to serious depression. An example from the novel is, "You know nothing, do you? You're like a child. Your brain is empty. There was no information in it." This is just one example of many in the novel. This kind of verbal abuse can really get into someone's head. The more abuse you get, the more you think that what they are saying is true. What Rashid said is very cruel and upsets Mariam a lot. These unkind words could lead to serious issues such as depression and PTSD. So now let's talk about the physical abuse. Physical abuse is the most common type of abuse in an intimate relationship. Physical abuse is usually connected with verbal abuse, but the aftermath is way more severe, such as broken bones or permanent physical damage. Rashid was by far the most abusive character in the novel. His rage comes from his son that he lost and the miscarriage of his daughter. An example of this physical abuse would be through the mouthful of grit and pebbles, Mariam mumbled a plea. Tears were leaking out of the corner of her eyes. Rashid's actions are totally inhumane in this part of a novel. Forcefully making someone eat pebbles would be very painful and cruel. Just because he does not like the taste of the rice she made does not mean you have to hurt her. And now let's talk about sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is when one of the members is forced or raped into having sex by the other member. This can be very traumatizing to the victim as it's not consensual to them. Rashid forces himself on Miriam throughout the novel, and she has no say in the matter whatsoever. An example of this would be, "There's no shame in this, Miriam. It's what married people do. It's what the Prophet himself and his wives did. Whether you're married or not, you should never force your partner to have sexual intercourse with you. Miriam was already forced to marry a very abusive man, and now he is forcing her to do something that she does not want to consent to." So, how is it important? Well, spousal abuse is a very important theme of the novel because it shows us the struggles that Afghan women have to face every day. For a country that is quite sexist and place men more superior than women, it is very common to hear about this abuse. We get to see both perspectives of spousal abuse, from Miriam and Layla's perspectives, being the ones that are abused, and Rashid's perspective, the abuser. We explore why people abuse their spouse and why the abused partner does not stand up for themselves. Most of the time, the abusers have rage that they need to release, so they let it out on the ones close to them. The victims to this rage are too scared to stand up for themselves as they fear the consequences they will face. Now, I did some research on a news article. This woman's name is Shakila Zareen. And so Shakila Zareen is an Afghan woman who was shot in the face 6 years ago by her abusive husband. Like most marriages in Afghanistan, it was forced. At the age of 16, she was forced to marry a man that was only 14 years old. She said on the day of her wedding is when the rapes and beatings started. One day, Shakila tried to report his abuse to the police, but the officers told her husband what she had done. That same night, her husband came to her mother's house, where she was staying at the time, and shot her in the face with a shotgun that destroyed half of her face. Thankfully, she survived, but was serious damage done to her face and brain. Now Shakila lives a safer life in Vancouver where she does not need to worry about her husband abusing her anymore. It's a prime example to show that these issues are very real and that it's not just in the novels. This also explains why Miriam and Layla did not want to report anything to the police. So, the conclusion. So, what is the author saying about the theme? The author, Khalid Hosseini, is trying to display to us what goes on in Afghanistan that we are not aware of. He wants to show us that spousal abuse can lead to many more problems in the future, such as emotional and physical issues. Hosseini puts it in perspective of the victims, hoping that if the abusers read this book, they will realize all the pain they are causing on people's lives. So now, just for some discussion questions that you guys can talk about. So number one, do you think Miriam killing Rashid was the ethical decision in the end? Number two, if you were in Miriam's position, what would you have done? Would you have done anything different? And number three, what can we do to help women all around the world who are suffering from this issue? Thank you.